to be starting pretty soon. And it looks like we do have a countdown in SRL, so we're about to kick this race off in just a few seconds. And they are off. Looks like we are seeing 2 Sanctuary starts, so I expect that both of them will Houlihan at the start of this race. And yes, they are both heading to the Chris Houlihan room. Looks like the guard got in Raikou's way, and it appears that both of them are going to be going for the same 4-jump, cave entrance, cave exit, Houlihan setup. This is the easiest setup to do, and it's very noteworthy that you can only perform this setup before you have the flippers, which is why it's called the flipperless Houlihan setup. You'll see a lot of players do this at the start of the game. And one big reason why you would do this early is to have money for bombs. It's very, very important to have bomb money at the start of the game, because they're your primary means of attacking before you get a hold of a sword. The only time when I ever wouldn't Chris Houlihan is if I had a rupee chest that was worth at least 100 rupees, and we're seeing a divergence already. Kermit heading to the uncle, while Raikou is going straight to Kakariko Village. Looks like Kermit's trying to get a bomb drop from some of the guards in the area, while Raikou is going to be heading up to check the Lumberjack to see if AGA 1 is required. We have $5 from the uncle and $300 at the Lumberjack hut, so no one will be picking that up, and AGA 1 may not be required. Kermit with a save and quit to Sanctuary. It looks like he's going to follow in Raikou's footsteps. At the Mushroom we have 3 bombs. Raikou almost didn't want to pick them up, and then realizing that he actually does want those 3 bombs because they'll be very useful when he goes to Kakariko Village, and it's going to save him a lot of time running to and from the bomb shop. Only some hearts from the Lost Woods Poultry. So moving into Kakariko is where you're going to see the meat and potatoes of all the early game items. And what's found here will largely determine where the runners are going to route early in the game. We have a bottle. We have a bottle on Raikou's side, so that will let him check the sick kid his first time through. So given the Chris Houlihan, which was kind of a moot point in the seed because of all the money that's already been found so far, with the 50 in Link's house, the 100 in the Thief's hut. But it's still very nice to have the extra money in the early game, especially if you can get 500 before going up to Zora. Or for an early Zora check, rather. I do like early Zora check, especially with Walk on Water being discovered. It's pretty lucrative early in the game. And we have a Cane of Samaria on Raikou's side. Pretty unusual item to find so early in the game. And we have Raikou checking to see if any of his bees are golden. It looks like there is one, so he already has enough money for Zora. Well, not after checking the bottle vendor item, but he should have enough money for Zora, so we might see an early Zora check from these runners. So it'll be very interesting to see where the runners go after this. Even with that bomb drop, or the bomb chest, it looks like Raikou is going to be picking up some bombs, and I do not blame him for the bomb check, especially after the Moldorm Cave. The mini Moldorm Cave can be very difficult. We have a small shield from the Sit Kid. That will definitely come in handy for some of the Light World dungeons. Oh, and it looks like Kermit has unfortunately performed the chicken softlock, so he is going to need to do a save and quit, and that is going to cost him a significant amount of time. I believe that happens. I believe it's throwing the chicken or picking up a chicken on a certain frame that causes that. I'm not entirely sure. Someone in chat can correct me, I'm certain. But it looks like Raikou is going to be taking the standard route of heading south to the dam. I don't think we've seen a map check from either of these runners yet. Come on, check your map. I want to see what the dungeons are. And there's those 20 rupees, so we should see a Zora check after heading down to Southeast Hyrule and opening all the chests there, depending on how comfortable Raikou is with fake flippers. And we have 50 rupees under the lake in the southern swamp, and Raikou says no. I don't blame him, though. He has Zora money. It's going to take him a while before he's going to need other money, unless you get a very early Dark World. Now, killing these mini Moldorms with bombs can be a very frustrating experience. This room can be frustrating with a sword. It's very easy to run out of bombs. Some nice kills. And now we'll have 5 chests. And we have a sword from the thief in Hyrule, and a glove. So now the open mode portion of the seed is over, so now that the runners will very quickly have a permanent weapon, it will be very similar to the races from last year's tournament. Kermit electing to pick up the heart container, I could definitely see that from a less experienced runner. And Raikou looks like he is heading up towards the Ice Rod Cave. I see a lot of runners hold off on this cave until after they have Flute. But it can very easily turn into a loose square in the early game. And some more bombs in the Ice Rod Cave, which is not a bad thing for him, because he does need some bombs. So now it looks like since he's not doing a save and quit, we'll see a fake flipper from him. Getting bonked by a crab, leaving him in a pretty perilous position with only half a heart. Those crabs in the early game do tons of damage. Very nice fake flipper. I don't think I've ever seen other runners do a setup like that before. Most of the runners I see that do a fake flipper do it from the left side using the bush as a setup. We have a heart container on the island. I don't see him going back for that. We'll see what's up at the hobo. And it looks like we have Kermit going to check Agonaz Cave. So if there's something important there, then this could very easily turn the tide of this race. At hobo, we have just a heart container. And it does look like he is trying to jump back. This jump is a little precise. He gets it second try. And Agonaz Cave has 20 bucks. So we are seeing Raikou make that jump. He's likely going to take the whirlpool up to Northeast Hyrule to do a overworld or a light world ferry and a Zora check. Or maybe not a light world ferry check. He may not be familiar with the minor glitch that's used to walk on the water there. We have an arrow upgrade at the river ledge. I see a lot of runners, especially newer runners, try to avoid Zora until after they have the flippers. But in general, I think it's a good idea to come up here as soon as you have the money, just because you'll get knowledge of what the river item is. And King Zora with a life lesson as Kermit picks up his sword and his power glove. So with that glove in hand, it'll be very interesting to see what he does. But it looks like he is going to check the castle basement. Depending on how comfortable he is with dark rooms, I could see him going to the castle from here as well. Looks like Kermit is doing a very similar setup, just on the other side, to do his fake flipper. And it looks like it's giving him a little bit of trouble. And we have a hook shot in the basement and a bug net. I'm sure he is thrilled to see that. This fake flipper giving Kermit a lot of trouble, finally gets it. And it looks like Raikou is going to do the full run on the castle. So it'll be interesting to see if he's just going to go down to the 3 chests in Escape and leave the one room. It really depends on his comfort with dark rooms. I do like this routing decision to take care of both this and the castle in one go. It does save a couple of screen transitions and a little bit of time in terms of backtracking. So the hookshot actually does not open up terribly many things right now. If he was comfortable with doing a Death Mountain in the dark, then I could very well see him going to Death Mountain after this. I'm not quite sure of his comfort level with dark rooms. it looks like Kermit is going to do the walk on water. So we'll be able to see which items are in these chests, if he can get the setup right. It doesn't look like it. I don't think he realizes that he can't open those chests just by swimming, because the game considers him to be on the wrong layer. So it looks like he is going to check just the Zora ledge and get his life lesson as well. Meanwhile, Raikou continuing through escape. Nothing noteworthy yet. It looks like Raikou going with the double pot strat for the guard, which I don't blame him at all with just a fighter's sword. And Zelda's chest having just 20 rupees. And it will be interesting to see where he is going. It looks like he is going to do the sewers chest with no lamp. And it looks like Kermit is going to follow him to the castle basement. So far, a couple of minor divergences, but nothing major. Which is to be expected, as this seed still is not very open yet. We're still looking for a real progression item. Kermit picking up his hookshot and his bug net as well. So we'll see how Raikou can navigate these dark rooms. Looks like he's doing a pretty good job of it so far. Now, this last room is easily the trickiest room of the three. What he has to do is he has to find the chest positioning in the dark with just his sword. And it looks like he found it pretty quickly, and he is rewarded with a mere heart container. So it'll be interesting to see what his options are at this point. I think his only real options are either to go to Eastern Palace or to go to Death Mountain, and it looks like he is going to choose Eastern Palace. Now, you'll see a lot of runners visit Eastern Palace a little bit earlier than these two do, just because you have the potential to get anywhere between 4 and 6 items. And because Eastern Palace is accessible with almost no items, you'll see a lot of early progression items in there. If you talk to Sahasrahla, he will also tell you which dungeon has the green pendant. And we'll see if he finds that information. He does not talk to Sahasrahla at all. And still no map check. There's a map check. It looks like we have 3 crystals in the light world. And we have an important crystal at Eastern Palace. So all 3 light world dungeons will be required. And Raikou heading into Eastern Palace while Kermit is finishing up his escape chests. It'll be interesting to see if he opts to do that chest in the dark as well. You'll see a lot of newer runners try to save the castle for later. That was a great kill by Kermit, using his hookshot to be able to stun the guard to trap him in a corner. Significantly faster than the double pot strat. Interesting that both of them check their map at about the same time. And this room is so nice with the hookshot. And we have a lantern in Eastern Palace. So I imagine as soon as these runners are done with Eastern Palace, they're both going to make a beeline for Death Mountain. So it looks like he is going to continue, and I don't blame him. Looks like Raikou is not familiar with the strategy of despawning the Stalfos in that room, although takes care of it pretty quickly. And we have the Moon Pearl! Moon Pearl in Eastern Palace. That is a big find. So it looks like Kermit is going to find his lantern and his Moon Pearl. So now he will be headed straight for Death Mountain. Which at this point for him, it's either go to Death Mountain or go to Agonon's Cave. And I don't blame him with that hook shot. Death Mountain is easily the most lucrative spot he has right now. So Kermit about to pick up his lantern, while the Death Mountain old man just has a little bit of love. With the hammer, I think this is the correct routing choice. That cabbage getting in Raikou's way to mess up his hook speed, unfortunately, so he will be walking over to the portal and this cave pretty slowly, and we have a flute at Spectacle Rock, so it'll be interesting to see how quickly he comes back to Death Mountain once he finds a way up there, which is going to be the mirror. Passing up on that 300 rupees, money absolutely plentiful in the scene. So, Death Mountain being finished up by Kermit, and Raikou making the play for Aga 1, which, from his perspective, he only has this and Agana, and we know that Agana is garbage, so this is absolutely the correct play for him here. And with his lantern, he does not have to worry about doing these rooms in the dark. It's pretty rare to have to do these rooms in the dark in any seed, or rather where it would be beneficial to do so. Because the logic will never require you to do a dark room in this setting. Now, in higher difficulties, and in minor glitch variants, it can definitely require it. But for the settings used for this tournament, minor glitches will not be required, but they can certainly be very helpful. And Kermit should pick up a little bit of time on Raikou in this room, just because he doesn't have to worry about his health situation so much. And since Kermit already checked Agana, when he finds that he won't see a progression item here, the way forward should be obvious to him, and the racers should sync up, so it should be pretty obvious who is ahead at this point. So the only differences so far is that Kermit got the chicken house soft block, and Raikou did not check Agana. And I don't see him checking Agana until after he finds the flute, or either after he finds the flute or whenever he decides to route Desert Palace, which he has no incentive to go there. Good use of his hookshot to stun the guard there. Almost falls off. And it looks like now that Kermit has his lantern, he will be doing the chest in the basement with a lamp, which is going to give him a significantly easier time. A lot of blue balls from Aghanim on Raikou's side. Kermit, where are you going? He probably doesn't realize that this door closes behind him, so he has no way to get back. He's gonna have to up an A. Meanwhile, Raikou finishing off Aga, so we will see exactly what is at this pyramid. So it looks like we have Important Crystal at Mire. And Turtle Rock Green Pendant. And then Palace of Darkness and Ice Palace having the other two pendants. And Pyramid Ledge has a Piece of Heart. Raikou says no. I would definitely see some runners consider picking that up, because running around Dark World with Green Tunic and 7 Hearts can be very dangerous. Although it's not like the seed is giving them very much choice. So it'll be interesting to see his routing from here. I would think he would go check the Magic Cape Cave, and then take care of Kakariko, or Village of Outcasts rather. Nice use of Bombos by Kermit to take out both of those ball and chain guards. So nothing at the Cape Cave. So after he checks the 3 chests in the Village of Outcasts, we'll see where he goes. Depending on... Oh, it looks like he's gonna go to Skull Woods first. This is a gutsy play. I could see 2 plays here from him. He could just be coming here to pick up items. But he does not have a Fire Rod to actually finish this dungeon, so it does look like this is a play for items at this point, and I do not blame him at all. The items here are usually pretty quick, unless Mothula has one of the items. But if you hit both items before going to the Fire Rod required section of the dungeon, it can usually be pretty lucrative. And we have a mirror! Mirror in Skull Woods. That is a tremendous find for Raikou. That is going to open up a lot of locations and greatly increases mobility traveling between both worlds. We have no key yet, so it looks like he's going straight through, so we will see a bomb jump from Raikou here. Definitely one of the easier bomb jumps in the game to learn. And just a burrito. So at this point, Raikou is down to 1 chest in Skull Woods. Raikou's going to need to watch his health in the Samaria room in Skull Woods, because he's down to 1 heart. Meanwhile, Kermit finishing his climb, about to fight Agawan and get Dark World access. Death from Raikou, probably intentional to get his health back. So only 1 item accessible in Skull Woods right now, without a Fire Rod, but it is an incredibly valuable item, and it will be interesting to see whether Kermit takes that dive into Skull Woods as soon as he gets to the Dark World as well. Depending on what other items there are, that could put him quite a bit behind. But only time will tell. If he does check Skull Woods right away, though, this could be a very interesting and very close race coming to the end. The other interesting thing is whether we'll see him dive Thieves Town as well. And a bottle and a fairy in the bombable hut in the Village of Outcasts. So I can see that fairy being a deal breaker for him to go into Thieves Town. He'll just need to be careful with his health, because 7 hearts is not a lot for Thieves Town, especially if you're used to lower percent runners. If you're not a low percent runner, then you could certainly be very scared of diving into Thieves Town with as few maximum hearts and green mail. And Kermit now getting to Dark World after a nice Aga 1 kill. You'll see a fair number of runners. Be a little bit wary of going into Thieves Town without a hammer, because the big chest is quite a bit of backtracking work to get to if you enter this dungeon and clear it without a hammer. And when there's something important in here, it can make or break races. And it looks like a very interesting routing decision from Kermit. He is going to Catfish. Certainly an interesting decision, but we have seen Catfish with some pretty powerful items. We'll see if it pays off for Kermit this time. And he's rewarded with $5. Wow, that is a very timely fairy drop for Raikou. He should feel pretty comfortable clearing out the rest of this dungeon. He has a lot of hearts to work with. Still needs to be careful, though, because you can get beat up pretty quickly in Thieves Town without a mail upgrade. Oh! Kermit with a death, and because he does not have the mirror, he is... Oh, I'm thinking of the Moon Pearl, not the mirror. We have flippers in Thieves Town for Raikou. So that death actually didn't wind up being all that bad for him. It's you have to have the Moon Pearl to start. Another death, this one on Raikou's side. He has 2 fairies, so he should be okay. So Kermit's stunning that fly trap with his hookshot, and I do not blame him at all. They do ludicrous amounts of damage for the amount of health that he has. Interesting that Kermit is going straight to Village of Outcasts and not checking the Cape Cave. It'll be interesting to see when he gets back there, and he is not going to Skull Woods right away, so he may miss this mirror. And we have Powder in Blind's chest. I'm sure that Raikou is thrilled to see that. So now there's a 50-50 chance that the last item in Thieves Town is going to require the hammer. So we will see how his blind fight goes. It shouldn't be an issue of surviving it, because he does still have that extra fairy that he got as a drop from the Stalfos earlier in the dungeon. Of course we're doing a blind run of this game. Now in this blind fight, you would rather take a hit from fireballs than take a hit from any of the main bodies. And Raikou suffering a death. He does have a fairy to pick him up, and it can be extremely difficult to dodge all the fireballs in that room. Borderline Danmaku. And we have a fire rod! We have a fire rod in Blind's room. So it'll be interesting to see if he goes back to Thieves Town. Given that he has a bug net and powder, I could see him making a couple of fairies in certain rooms in Skull Woods, but it looks like he is not going to finish Skull Woods. And given that he only has 7 heart containers, I don't exactly blame him. Kermit taking a little bit different routing through Thieves Town than Raikou did. And it looks like Raikou is going to make the South Dark World sweep. And this sweep is one of the reasons why you want to do this so early in there. We have a Book of Mudora in the digging game. So with that Book of Mudora and that mirror in hand, it'll be very interesting to see when he returns to Skull Woods. Now, given the pendants being Turtle Rock and Ice Palace, it is pretty unlikely that this is a Ped Seed, but if this is a Ped Seed, he'll want to know sooner than later. Looks like he is checking the Cliff Cave, almost passes up on these bombs, and then realizes that he's out of bombs. Kermit's still going through Thieves Town. So far, the seed still really hasn't opened up yet. We've only seen a couple of route divergences so far. And now I could see him going to a Hype Cave here. And since he has the book, we may actually see him check Bombos here. It'll be interesting to see if he goes back to check the Bombos tablet, and regardless where he goes from here. But he does have a Hype Cave coming up. There are 5 items in here. And meanwhile, Kermit about to find his flippers. We have a shovel. So it'll be interesting to see whether he turns the shovel in for the buried item right away as well. And it looks like he is heading back there. I do like this routing decision. Without a flute, it can be very difficult to get back here. But it'll certainly be interesting to see where he goes from here, because there aren't terribly many options. I could see Desert. We have Ether at the dig spot. And it looks like he is going to save and quit in the Light World, so I could see him going to either Death Mountain or the desert, and that is not either one of those locations. Look like he got a little bit trigger-happy in the menu, and he is headed back up to Death Mountain. I would say he's going to check Ether Tablet and Hera. Kermit with his powder. And a very timely fairy as well. That is going to help out tremendously for the blind fight. And I do not blame him one bit for coming back here. I can see him getting this flute, checking Ether, doing Hera, and then immediately going back to Kakariko to activate the flute. This is a very good routing choice. Depending on what the Mire requirement is, he could also potentially route Mire and Desert together. And a Tempered Sword at the Ether Tablet, that is great news for him. That is going to speed up his combat tremendously. Kermit having a great blind fight here, taking full advantage of his sword beams. One of the few things that the sword beams are actually useful for. We have a big key in the first room in Hera, so we will not be seeing a basement run unless there is an item there. And Kermit gets his fire rod as well. So I imagine that he will probably make the Dark World sweep from here, and then it'll be interesting to see where he goes. Or he is not. He is headed in the direction of Skull Woods, so he may pick up this mirror and get back on track. But having that mirror so early still does put Raiko at a significant advantage, and we have a fire shield, which is something I'm sure he would have wanted to see before he fought blind. And Kermit realizing that he is unable to get into Skull Woods that way. Skull Woods has some very interesting design choices in it. It's kind of segregated into three parts. One that has the boss section of Skull Woods, one that has the rest of Skull Woods, and one that's just a passage to get to the north corner of the Dark World next to the Cape Cave. Raiko entering the Moldorm fight with the Tempered Sword. This should be pretty easy. It only takes 3 hits. Some nice movement tech using Hookshot from Kermit, and he is going to be thrilled to find this mirror. What he doesn't know is that Raiko found this mirror way earlier than he did. Interesting choice for him to mirror here. He was probably thinking that he entered the dungeon from another spot. And Raiko with the immediate save and quit after Hera, I could see him heading to a number of locations from here. It'll be interesting to see where he goes after the flute. I would say that he is probably going to go to Desert. He won't be able to combo it with Mire because he's missing mitts. But Desert is still pretty lucrative. From his perspective, it is a potential 5 items. Well, 4 items, not 5. But it's still probably his best option at this point. And Raiko with the flute activation, get your swag ducks. It looks like Kermit is not comfortable with the bomb jump, so he is going the backwards route to get to the big chest, only to find the burrito. And it looks like he is making the play for desert. This logic does tend to bias the two item locations in the desert, so I do not blame him at all for going here. Depending on what is on the torch, he may not be able to finish this dungeon, but he does have a good shot at finishing it now. Ah yes, the pedestal. There are actually very few things that can be on the pedestal. At this point, the bow cannot be on the pedestal. The hammer cannot be on the pedestal. The boots... The boots could be on the pedestal. And I think the only other thing that could be on the pedestal is Quake to get into Mire. So it is there's a pretty small chance that the pedestal is actually required in the seed, and that tends to be the case whenever Turtle Rock is a pendant. So, and I did gloss over, Raikou did find the big key in the eastern side of desert, about to check the torch, which has a compass, so the boots will not be required for this dungeon. And given the dungeon order, this actually has the potential to be a bootless seed. And it looks like Kermit is headed to the other side of Skull Woods. And we have not found the other item in Skull Woods yet, so it will be interesting to see if Kermit can finish this dungeon. The Mothula fight's going to be pretty difficult with the resources that he has. With only 3 hearts, I'm not sure if Kermit has any backup, so this Mothula fight will be extremely dangerous. Especially considering that he did not get the Tempered Sword from Death Mountain yet. And that's going to give Raikou a significant edge in his combat and takes an almost immediate death. But he does have a fairy. Looks like he's having a pretty good fight. He just needs to be careful with these beams, and he gets it. And we have Titan's Mitts! Titan's Mitts at Mothula, which is an item that Raikou does not have. That is going to open up a significant portion of the overworld. And we have Blue Mail in the desert. That is a tremendous find for Kermit. So it will be interesting to see how the routing goes at this point. Their paths should diverge pretty significantly because both of them have a major item that the other does not. It looks like Raikou making his way to Agonaz Cave. A good routing choice, but he is going to be disappointed. And it looks like Kermit is heading up to Death Mountain, so he will be able to pick up his flute, and then he will not only be able to finish Hera, but he will be able to keep going and head over to Dark Death Mountain and check the 6 chests over there. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes. It looks like Raikou, with that blue mail in hand, maybe headed back to Skull Woods. Where is he going? I don't think he realizes that he can't get into Skull Woods this way. He doesn't have a hammer or the mitts, so I don't think he realizes that the only way into the Dark World at this point is the castle gate. And he seems to be coming to that realization right now, that he's going to have to go through the castle gate. Although Kermit is up on Death Mountain without a book, so he is going to miss out on that Tempered Sword, so it will be interesting to see how far behind that puts him in terms of his combat. But I would expect that Tempered Sword speeding up Raikou's combat to increase his lead further, but given that he has these Titan's Mitts already, it's very difficult to tell who's ahead, and Raikou is going to Palace of Darkness? I could see him going to Palace of Darkness here. It's potentially a lot more items, and generally if you get bull blocked in Pod, you get bull blocked pretty quick, so you can get a lot of information about it, and there's potentially 5 items he can get here versus 1 at Catfish and 1 at Skullwoods, so it's definitely a bold move and a very time-consuming move coming here, but it's definitely a defensible move. We just know that it's not the right move. And he does pick up a small key, so he will be able to keep going. You can't go downstairs here. Downstairs will just take you to rooms with a whole bunch of mimics. And we see Kermit trying to use spins here. It can be very difficult to use spins, and takes a fall to Moldorm. He did remember to lower the orange blocks, though, so he will be able to fill up his health every time. But health isn't really the concern. But it looks like he will be able to progress pretty far. And I'm sure having an early lantern is one of the big reasons for coming here. We have a mushroom. So I can imagine that the next time he's in the light world, he's probably going to take a whistle over to the witch's hut and turn that in. I'm not quite sure Raikou needs to pick up all this money in the basement. And it does look like we have Kermit finishing up Tower of Hera, which is going to even up the crystal count. So it'll be very interesting to see what Kermit does here. It looks like he is going to be heading over to Dark Death Mountain. So if there is something else here that could really even up this race, we have a big key in Pod on Raikou's side, so he will be able to check the big chest. And silver arrows! Silver arrows in Pendant Palace of Darkness big chest. That is absolutely buried in that dungeon. It will be very interesting to see if Kermit goes back into Palace of Darkness ever to obtain those silver arrows. Because if he doesn't, he may have a very difficult time if he does not come back up to pick up the Tempered Sword or finds a sword upgrade later in the scene. For a skilled player, Silverless Ganon versus Silvers, it's about a 3 to 3.5 minute difference. So those silver arrows are absolutely huge, and he has got to be pretty happy with finding those. So we could see a medallion check here, and it looks like we do see a medallion check. Quake is required for... Quake is required to get into Turtle Rock, so Quake can no longer be at the pedestal. So I believe that the only way this could be a pedestal seed is if the boots are there, and there is the big key in GT on the torch. We do have Kermit at Hookshot Cave, hoping to find something important here. Just an arrow upgrade and some cash. So the question is, will we see a Spike Cave check? Does not look like it, and without a cane or a cape and enough potions to get through, I do not blame him. It looks like Raikou is going to head up to... He may be thinking about doing the King's Tomb Graveyard... or the King's Tomb Graveyard Cliff Cave combo, but he can't check that King's Tomb because he doesn't have the boots. So this is all just for one item. He is not going to be very happy about where he left that portal either, because as soon as he steps out of that cave, he is going to Mirror Bonk. Kermit looks like he is headed off of Death Mountain to get that flute activated as well. Usually, the Graveyard Cliff Cave winds up not having anything important in it, but because of the way routing tends to go, that can very easily end up being a loose square. And get your swag ducks ready for Kermit, too. So now, with the Titan's Mitts and the flute in his hand, I could very easily see him going to a Misery Mire, and it looks like that is exactly where he is headed. And Raikou up to... looks like he is going to combo Catfish with the Waterfall Fairy and turn in his Mushroom. So he will cash that in for an item, and it looks like we have Bombos as the requirement for Mire, which both competitors already have. So we're getting a Mire Shed check from Kermit here, which has the Cane of Brian. And the Mushroom just becomes some love. I'm a little surprised he hasn't been picking up Pieces of Heart, given how little health he has for this point in the game. So it looks like we are going to see a Checkerboard Cave check here. And we know that Raikou is not going to be very happy with what he finds at Catfish, but he does have other reasons for coming up here. It looks like we have Lord Banana in Checkerboard Cave, and Kermit says no. So he does have... So Raikou does have more of a reason to come up here than Kermit did, but it's not much more of a reason. It does allow him to check 2 more items. It's always really nice when you can route Catfish with Zora and the fairy, but it can be pretty difficult to do so in open mode, especially with the incentive to Chris Houlihan so early. And a bunch of nothing in the Light World Fairy. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes. I mean, he does not have a lot of options at this point. It's either... For him, it's either Bombo's Tablet or one chest in... one chest in Swamp Palace. Because with the hammer, you can well, it's more than one chest. He does not have hammer, so he actually cannot check any chests. Or he can check one chest without the hammer in Swamp Palace. So it looks like Raikou is heading in what we know is the correct direction, which is Skull Woods. And Kermit in the Desert, definitely a walking percent seed. We are 67 minutes into this seed, and we still do not have any boots. So Raikou is headed in the right direction, and he is going to find these mitts when he kills Mothula, and he is going to be kicking himself for leaving this dungeon. I don't blame him for leaving this dungeon, because it is very dangerous fighting Mothula with 7 hearts and a green tunic. But he is not going to be happy when he finds the location of these mitts, and he's probably going to start feeling time pressure. So both competitors appear to be finishing up dungeons. Raikou taking quite a beating from the Gibdos in that room. Looks like he is going to go for the fairy there, which is a great play. So we'll see how his Mothula fight goes. Looks like we're going to be seeing dueling boss fights. Kermit with Lambos and Raikou with Mothula. That was a pretty good volley from Kermit. But the Fire Rod kill on the Moldorms, or the Landmolas, isn't exactly the easiest thing to do. Raikou getting some pretty bad luck from Mothula. Finally takes Mothula down, and he is going to see those mitts, and he is not going to be happy. So both of them finishing up their crystals at roughly the same time, so that will tie the crystals up, and that will tie the items up as well. So both of them are at about even footing at this point in the seed. Raikou is going to check the pedestal, it looks like. It's very unlikely that this will not be... Or it's very unlikely that this pedestal will actually be required. And pedestal says, I make things go triple boom! So this is not going to be a ped seed. And with that blue mail, Kermit is going to head into Misery Mire. And Raikou, with his mitts, is going to be heading to Dark Death Mountain. So, I would say at this point the race is a little too close to call. I would say with Raikou's Silver Arrows and Tempered Sword, he still has a slight edge. But in terms of progress made in the game, Kermit is a little ahead. Kermit making great use of his powder here. Raikou opting to buy a red potion in Death Mountain. I don't see a lot of runners do that. But it looks like with his hook shot, he is going to check these 6 items in Death Mountain, and he is going to find a whole bunch of nothing. But it'll be interesting to see what's in Mire, because you'll typically see a lot of runners try to avoid Mire until they are in Go mode. This is a very interesting routing choice for Kermit here. You pretty rarely see people go into the side of the dungeon. Misery Mire actually has way more keys than you ever need, and no matter how the logic is, you never need to visit the fish room. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's not thinking of where the other crystal switch is in here. As awkward as the routing typically is through Misery Mire, going this way, and now he's going back! Kermit, where are you going? Oh, I did miss that. Yes, I did miss that. Thank you very much, chat, for pointing that out. We do have a hammer in Misery Mire. So that is going to give Kermit a bit more of an advantage and make this race closer, or possibly, depending on how Raikou routes and or how Kermit routes, this could easily swing the race in his favor. One of the more awkward overworld routes that I find that's coming up for Raikou is when you try to do the World Frog Tour with the purple chest, which you see a lot of runners commonly do. Is there's no easy way to get over to Mad Batter unless you have the hammer. Well, there is a way to get there, but there's not a very easy way to get back. Well, some love for Mad Batter, which I am sure Raikou is perfectly okay to find, considering he's only on 9 hearts. We have Vanilla Big Key in Misery Mire from Kermit's side. It looks like Kermit is going to be using this room to stock up on fairies, which I do not blame him one bit for. Because Vitreous can be a very dangerous fight without any invincibility items and just a Master Sword. I would have to give the edge to Kermit here right now, but unless he can combat really well against bosses, that Tempered Sword is going to speed up Raikou's combat to the point where this race could be pretty even by the time we get into Go mode. So the reason why Raikou is walking the purple chest there, despite the fact that he has done his complete sweep of the Dark World, or the Southwest Dark World by now, is this is his only good way to get a Light World portal over here so that he can combine this with Bombos. Bombos tends to be in a very awkward spot for most overworld routes. And Kermit making his way through the depths of mire pretty hastily for not having boots. And just 10 arrows from the sky. And it looks like Raikou is going to be following Kermit into mire, and he is going to be pretty happy with what he finds here. But before he goes in there, he is going to check Mire Shed. Kermit going with the hammer for the Vitreous fight, and this can be extremely dangerous. Raikou gets his Cane of Brian. This is a tough fight. And Kermit needs to be really careful here because one more bop from those eyeballs and he is dead. Oh, takes a death. He has backup though. These later boss fights where the developers really expected you to have a Tempered Sword and even Butter Sword for can be very difficult with just a Master Sword, especially if you're not used to running low percent. For these kinds of seeds where the swords are in very difficult places to get to, it's really where no major glitches and especially low percent runners get a ton of advantage from, just because they've already done all the skill grinding necessary to clear all of these boss fights in a low percent situation. And the Vitreous Eyeball takes a lot of spins. Takes, I want to say, 36 spins? It's either 24 or 36 spins. But I know Vitreous is the only boss in the game besides Ganon that does not die to a single silver arrow. So, finished with his 5th crystal, he is going to go back in. He must have missed an item. Looks like he is going to go back to check that big chest. Yes, that's exactly what he's doing. He's going to check the big chest. And just some love. Raikou's really low on magic, so he's actually going to need to light these last 2 torches with just a lamp, and he needs to do it quickly. Just barely gets it off. And with that hammer in hand, it does look like that... Kermit is headed to Swamp Palace, which is a fantastic play. There's 6 items left. Or there's 6 items there, and I believe, given that Pedestal is not needed, as long as boots are not required for GT, I believe he is just a bow away from Go mode. And Raikou gets his hammer, and he's got to be pretty happy with that. But little does he know that he's actually fallen behind. So it'll be very interesting to see. I think this race is going to come down to both execution and the difference between Tempered Sword and Master Sword Ganon. Raikou does still have a big advantage in that aspect, in that he has silver arrows, but for the time being, Kermit has a significant lead. Like, he just needs to find this bow. All they both really need is just this bow, so it's going to be whoever finds this bow first. And depending on how they route, they could find it one right after another. So it really depends on where this bow is. That's the big deciding factor, is will one of them... if it's in Swamp, then Kermit has a slight edge. As long as he does not find... As long as the items stay the way they are other than the bow, Kermit has a slight edge in that he's about half a dungeon ahead of Raikou at this point, but Raikou does have much faster combat, and he's going to save about 3 minutes over Kermit in the Ganon fight, assuming that Kermit knows how to do a Silverless Master Sword Ganon, which is no easy feat. So it really depends on how comfortable Kermit is with Silverless Ganon, but right now, even though it looks like Kermit has a significant lead, this race is probably too close to call. Rai, where are you going? He's gonna go up there and find out that he needs to flip that switch, and he will not be a happy camper. So Raiko about to start the Vitreous fight. And it'll be interesting to see if Kermit decides to full clear this dungeon. I think it depends on how quickly he has items. So now you will start to notice just how much of a difference Tempered Sword versus Master Sword makes in the fight against Vitreous. You'll see Raiko's fight be significantly faster than Kermit's. And we have an Ice Rod. That Ice Rod could potentially, depending on where Quake is, this could make searching for this bow very interesting. Because depending on if Quake, depending on if we find Quake in Swamp Palace, that could open up Turtle Rock as a possible location for the bow, which would be extremely trolly and something that 826 is definitely capable of. Raiko finishing up a Misery Mire with a great Vitreous fight. So that will even up the score at 5 crystals apiece. They both just have Eastern and Swamp Palace, and Swamp Palace is the only one of the 2 dungeons they can actually complete. So it looks like Raiko is going to check Checkerboard Cave, then I will say he's probably going to make a beeline for Swamp Palace. And Raiko also says no to Lord Banana. Sorry, TGE. Warping to 4 and heading south. Looks like he's making a beeline to Swamp Palace. This race is getting closer by the moment. And it looks like Kermit is going to full clear Swamp Palace with all 6 items. Some people don't like this because it takes a lot of time to get to the 2 items out on the east or on the west side of Swamp Palace, but that can wind up being a loose square. I personally am a proponent for... Oh, we have boots! So now, as soon as Kermit finds this bow, he will have unconditional go mode. So we have boots at 88 minutes. The question is, will these boots actually be required? And that could be another factor here. If Raiko decides to skip the 2 chests on the west side of Swamp Palace, he could very easily miss out on these boots. And that's definitely something he may be able to do. That's something he may do because he may be feeling a little bit of time pressure with how the seed has played out so far. Kermit forgetting he doesn't actually have the big key, although it's very easy to try to open that chest, especially if you are an NMG runner. So there's 3 more items in this basement. And Kermit is definitely going to check these. Yes, he's going down to check them. We have the big key, and we have Quake, so that could potentially mean that the runners may have to go into Turtle Rock to get this bow. This could be very exciting. And it does look like Kermit is going to go back and check this big chest, which I agree with. And almost a high 5 from the 2 runners, too. Kermit probably not happy to see that burrito. So now he is going to go back to the basement, check the last chest, the chest in the waterfall room. Raikou with his ice rod. And Kermit coming up to the waterfall room. This race is so close. Bow! We have a bow in Swamp Palace go mode for Kermit. And with Raikou roughly halfway through Swamp Palace, there's no way that he's going to miss this bow. This is going to be a tight race, folks. So it'll be interesting to see how much of a lead Kermit has going in. And another big deciding factor in this race is if somebody finds a sword upgrade in Ganon's Tower or Eastern Palace. Well, there won't be an Eastern Palace because we already have all 3 items out of there. But I really feel that Kermit is banking on finding a sword upgrade in G Tower. Kermit having a little bit of trouble with Argus. For whatever reason, I always get those 2 bosses mixed up. And the 6th crystal for Kermit, all he needs to do is go back to Eastern Palace and finish off those Armos Knights. So he is going to give a little bit of time back to Raikou during that fight as well, just because he doesn't have silver arrows, and looks like he really is banking on finding that sword upgrade, because even if you know what you're doing, Master Sword Silverless Ganon is a long ordeal. And now Raikou in the basement of Swamp Palace as well. He is going to find his Quake, and he is going to find his bow, and he will be in go mode as well. Raikou is going back to check this big chest, and I do not blame him one bit. So it'll be interesting to see what the time differential is upon entering Ganon's Tower. And there is Raikou's go mode. So we have both runners in go mode. So when both of these players finish Eastern Palace, we'll have a really good time. We'll have a really good indicator of who's ahead. And that Tempered Sword making a big difference against Argus. And this is what I meant before by that Tempered Sword saving a ton of time during combat, and Silver Arrows as well, to be able to defeat Argus with one attack. So now we're at 6 crystals apiece. Kermit mostly done with Eastern Palace, but Raikou is going to be right on his heels. So it looks like Kermit is going to get to the boss at about the same time that Raikou enters the dungeon. So Kermit finishing up the Armos Knights, having a pretty good fight. So Kermit getting his 7th crystal at 1 hour 37 minutes 2 seconds. So we'll see exactly how much the gap is at the end of this fight. And Raikou's fight should be significantly faster. Raikou forgetting that he did not have the big key, that he still needs to get it. Nice hook speed from Kermit there. Just this wonderful display of talent. Despite being a new runner, Kermit has shown some real talent in this race, and it will be interesting to see whether he keeps running. This is a very interesting route up through the Dark World to get to Ganon's Tower. I want to say that this way up is actually a little bit slower than the Light World route, despite that he does not have the Turtle Rock entrance active. And it'll also be interesting to see exactly how the low health situation is going to affect both of these runners, because there's not been a lot of health and there's not been a lot of defense in this seed either, so a death in Ganon's Tower, or even the Ganon fight itself, is not out of the question. So any death could just turn this race completely around. It is not over for either of these runners by any stretch of the imagination. And now having Silver Arrows is going to make a huge difference for these Armos Knights. Watch how much faster this fight is going to be. And 139.35. So it's about a 2.5 minute difference grabbing the 7th crystal. This is going to wind up being a very, very tight race. This race is going to come down completely to execution. So, because the bombs are on the torch, that means that this, strictly speaking, would be a bootless seed. It is definitely possible to finish this race without the boots. Very interesting that Kermit is immediately going to the left, though, and not bothering to check the 2 chests on the right side. He might feel like he's under time pressure with the way the items have fallen. So this is chest number 5 for him. Oh, I'm sorry, Chad is correcting me that Kermit did check those 2 chests. This is such a close race, I can't take my eyes off the screen. It doesn't look close, but because one runner has silvers and one runner does not, this race is a lot closer than it looks. And the reason why I say that is because the time gap between these 2 runners is about the same as the time difference between a good silvers with tempered Ganon fight and a good Master Sword silverless Ganon fight. So these 2 are going to catch up about around the Ganon fight. And it's going to be extremely close going into Ganon. And we have Big Key on the left side, but Kermit is going to keep going for silver arrows in this next room, and I do not blame him one bit. But we do have a Big Key, and Raikou does have this advantage. Raikou does have an advantage in that he does not need to search for the silver arrows. He may search for a better sword. Kermit with another bottle, a heart container, and a heart piece, and he is going to keep going. He must not be oh, there he goes. He's mirroring up. He's on his way out. Raikou going right side. This is a good gamble to take because he's been playing the last 15 or 20 minutes of this seed like he's been under tremendous time pressure. So I don't blame him for taking this decision, but it's just not the right one, and it's going to give Kermit an extra advantage going up through Ganon's tower, and he is flying up this tower. It's a great grouping strategy that that Kermit is using for that first Mimic Room, and we'll see how the second Mimic Room goes for him. Second Mimic Room, these Beamos are giving him a lot of trouble. We'll see if there's anything worthwhile on the left side for Raikou. And there's nothing to help him. Even something like Red Mail could make a big difference during the Ganon fight, allowing him to be a lot more aggressive. And Kermit taking the safety fairies here, given that he only has 5 hearts, I don't blame him one bit. But he doesn't realize just how tight this race is. Kermit entering Gauntlet at 144.15. And neither of these runners have half magic, so they won't be able to bombos the Gauntlet. You'll see a couple of less experienced runners bombos Gauntlet because it will make these rooms a lot more consistent. They also will not be able to use Fire Rod as much. Great second room from Kermit. Wonderful execution. Great third room. This has been a great Gauntlet for him so far. Especially with the Master Sword and these enemies taking multiple hits. These rooms can be incredibly difficult. And Raikou taking the tile to the Fire Snake room, he's going to find this big key soon, and he's going to be going up the tower as well. And there's his big key, so he is on his way up, and Kermit is on Landmo 2. Beautiful, beautiful fight! Getting even 2 of those Landmos is very difficult. That was so well done. He is going to need to watch his magic, though, because he does not have a lot of magic for the Torch Room. He may need to do the Torch Room with just the Lantern, which, depending on how Raikou's magic management is, may even this up even more. That magic drop should give him at least enough magic to do the Torch Room with the Lantern. Looks like Kermit is not familiar with the one-cycle Wizrobe 2 room strategy. But even if you know what you're doing, it's pretty difficult to execute. I think he's going to have to light all 4 of these torches with the lamp, because he does not have enough magic to shoot his fire rod. Or maybe he does. It looks like he actually has just enough magic to be able to do that. Plus there's that additional container, but he will need to grab the full magic power up here. That fairy drop from Raikou is so clutch. There's been a lot of just clutch fairy drops in this run. And taking advantage of that Tempered Sword, Raikou is just going to be flying through this gauntlet. That Beamos giving him a little bit of trouble, but that was overall a good room 3. Raikou, though, with not enough magic to use his Fire Rod. Kermit coming up on Moldorm 2, and he is going to check this chest up here for silver arrows, and he is not going to be happy with what he finds, just a small key. Great silver arrow kill on a Landmo 2 from Raikou. And this is what we mean by having that better sword upgrade is going to be saving him time all throughout Ganon's Tower. He's just a floor behind Kermit now. Kermit finishing up Moldorm. Is he going to validate? He is going to validate and is rewarded with a Vampire Skewer, and he is not happy. But we do have a valid run. This is going to come down to execution during the Ganon fight. So we'll see how far apart their Aga 2 kills are. It's going to come down to Aga 2 and Ganon execution. No double hits so far. Only singles so far, and now the Aga clones are pretty far out of sync. Still, only single hits. That passed right over Aga, but that's not going to hit him because he wasn't fully materialized yet. And some blue balls. And a whiff. This Aga 2 not going well for Kermit. This is going to open the door for Raikou to catch up. And Aga 2 down at 149.44 for Kermit. And is Raikou validating? We have 2 valid runs, folks. Now, Kermit is going to mirror back to the light world, I'm assuming to buy some blue potion. So that's going to take up some more of his time, and it really depends on how well his execution is in the Ganon fight, but I think that trip into Palace of Darkness for Silver Arrows is going to be the deciding factor in this race. It's looking more and more like Raikou is going to win this race, just because of the power of having Silver Arrows for Ganon. It speeds up the fight so much. Looks like Agatu is giving Raikou a lot of trouble as well. And 151 flat, so after Agatu we have about a minute and 15-second difference between the two runners. So that trip over to the Witch's Hut to buy potions may very well have cost Kermit this race. But it's not over yet. But Raikou is the first into the Ganon fight, and he does have the advantage of the better sword and having the silver arrows. Sorry about that, guys. Raikou taking a death here as well, but he loaded up on fairies before the start of this fight, which I don't blame him for at all. It looks like Kermit is actually searching for the silver arrows. He may not be confident in being able to do a Master Sword Silverless Ganon. It looks like he is searching for the silver arrows. Unfortunately, he is going to have to dig very deep to find them. Raikou on Phase 3 Ganon. So at this point, if I were Kermit, I would actually consider fighting Ganon just to get the Silver's hint. Raikou does need to be a little bit careful. He's pretty low on magic, and I didn't see him buy a blue potion. So he's going to need to use his lantern to light these torches, because he did miss the torch glitch. And it looks like Kermit is checking the double-chested fairy, which is not a bad choice. We just know that it's not the right choice, that the silver arrows are very, very deep in Palace of Darkness. Looks like Raikou going for the single arrow strats to make sure, and he has successfully killed Ganon. And we have a dot done in IRC with a time of 1 hour, 53 minutes, 56 seconds. And we have Kermit going into the Ganon fight. And it looks like Kermit has done enough searching, so he is attempting to do a Silverless Master Sword Ganon fight, which, even if you're very experienced at the game, is incredibly difficult. But it does look like Kermit did find the red mail. So that will help out quite a bit. so that the fire bats will only do 2 hearts of damage instead of 3. So it's incredibly difficult. It can even be stressful for experienced runners, depending on the equipment that they have. A lot of more experienced runners would not have a terrible amount of difficulty with a Silverless Master Sword in Red Mail. But for someone who's a little bit newer, this can be very intimidating. I imagine what he might do is he might just try to get the 28 spins for the hint for the silvers. Because when you do get Ganon into his 4th phase, he will tell you where the silver arrows are located. So I would not be surprised to see Kermit either immediately fall or try to at least finish this fight out. And it looks like, based on him getting the torch glitch, he is trying to finish this fight out. And he is releasing his spin way too early. That one was much better timing, it was just a little bit late. So he is 24 spins away, and he is releasing his spin way too early. He's probably not familiar with the strategy for how to do Silverless Ganon. It can be pretty difficult getting the timing on it, and the movement to dodge the fire bat to be able to get double hits, because it can be very tricky to be able to do this fight just with normal magic. If you only get 1 hit per cycle, you can only miss a few cycles before you actually run out of magic. From what I can see, it just looks like he doesn't quite understand the timing. It looks like he got a hit there. He just needs 23 more. What he needs to do is he needs to release his spin on his sword before Ganon teleports away. Just before. And it looks like he's just consistently swinging too early. He has the right idea. He has the right idea, he's just letting his spin loose too early. And not to distract from the Silverless Ganon fight going on, but soon it will be time to guess the bonk count for Raikou. What do you think the bonk count will be, given we had boots very late? Looks like he is going to drink his potion, and he's not going to be able to harm Ganon without both of those torches lit. Like, he definitely has the right idea with the movement, it just needs to find the timing. Once he finds the timing, it'll only be a matter of time before he gets these 24 hits in. It looks like he's doing a very good job at least staying on the platform. And that's probably the trickiest part of doing a silverless Ganon fight. And running out of money doesn't look like it's going to be an issue, because he can go back to buy blue potions quite a bit. He just needs to get this timing down. But silverless Ganon at all is just, it's tough. But even if he does run out of potions, if he absolutely needs to, he can go into Palace of Darkness and get the silver arrows, because he does know that they are there. Seven bonks. And a 3:25 item menu time, that's very quick. Generally, a good item menu time for any given link to the past seed is approximately 2 minutes per hour. I have to say, though, Kermit is doing a fantastic job of staying on the platform. And that is half the battle when fighting Ganon without the silver arrows. And kudos to him for attempting such a difficult strategy on really one of his first races. So one of two things is going to happen during this Ganon fight. He's either going to figure out... what the timing is for the Master Sword swings, or he is going to die or fall down the pit, and then go get the silver arrows out of the Palace of Darkness, and then come back and do this in relatively short order. Still doesn't quite have the timing down. This is the point where I actually, since the race is already over, this is the part of the race where if I were a new player, I wouldn't be ashamed to Go on the internet and look up a video of how to fight Silverless Ganon. Because he definitely has the movement. It's just he doesn't know the right timing. Kermit did actually just get a hit on Ganon. That's 2 spins. He needs to get 22 more, but I think he's out of potions. So inevitably, he will run out of magic and will have no way to damage Ganon because he can't relight the torches. And down Kermit goes. So now he is mirroring back. It looks like he's going to go buy some potions. And then a play on Palace of Darkness wouldn't surprise me at all. So we'll see where he goes from here. If he goes to 4, he's going to try the Silverless fight again. He's going to 5. It looks like he is actually going to dig out the silver arrows from Palace of Darkness. I like this play. If you don't know how to do the Silverless Ganon fight, in the middle of a tournament race is not the place to learn. But just big kudos to Kermit for sticking this out. Like, this was just a really tough seed for him. He was playing extremely well up until the Ganon fight, and just that dive into Palace of Darkness by Raikou, that was a huge gamble, and it paid off massively for him. I do respect this decision to stay out of Palace of Darkness. It is a bit time-consuming to get all the items out of here. It's just unfortunate that the silver arrows wound up being in a pendant dungeon. That's one of the worst places for silver arrows to be for new players. It's just a really unfortunate situation. So he's going to make his way through these mimic rooms and eventually get back to the big chest where he will have his silver arrows. So he has definitely demonstrated that he can do the spins for the first half of Ganon's. So once he has the silver arrows, it should be over very quickly. But do not count him out of his bracket yet. Depending on how the bracket falls, he could very well wind up in a race-off for one of the spots. And with his silver arrows, Kermit is going to immediately save and quit and go straight for Ganon. So now that he has the silver arrows, this fight should be over in relatively short order. Yes, his timing on the spins is very good, and he's getting a lot of hits in succession. So Kermit going through his first potion. He has plenty of potions, though. I think he has 3. It should be more than enough, especially since all he really needs to get through is this Fire Bat phase, which he only has a few spins left on. I do like his movement during Fire Bat phase. That was solid. It looks like he is through Fire Bat phase, so he just needs 4 more spins, and then 4 more spins, each followed by a Silver Arrow to finish out. And he actually got a silverless hit. Did he just forget he had the silver arrows? Because he's doing silverless strats. He just got 3 silverless hits on Ganon. There he goes. You can't actually do a double hit on Ganon if he's right against the wall. You actually need to freeze him kind of in the middle or to one side to be able to get double hits. But with his arrow count, it shouldn't matter. He's just about done. And Ganon is down. GG to Kermit. And again, kudos to him for sticking this out. And Kermit has done with a time of 2 hours, 18 minutes, and 22 seconds. GG. That was a well-played race.